Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, "Was forced to do a task. Got my entire chain of command fired." For obvious reason, I will be omitting names and anything specific so my butt is covered. I've been serving in a certain military branch for 5 years and I'm nearing the end of my contract. So the give a care is completely gone. I'm in charge of inventory of specific pieces of equipment. Smaller pieces that are used by many people at my job. From time to time these pieces disappear. Most of the time that just means things are misplaced, but we just got out of a certain period where we had many hired contractors at our job that tend to take things. Now every once in a while we conduct an inventory of these pieces of equipment for accountability reasons. When we lose things, it looks very bad on my work. More specifically, bad on my bosses. So I prepared the inventory and was startled by the amount of missing pieces. I did everything I needed to do and presented the inventory to my boss. He didn't believe we had so many pieces missing and asked for me to inventory them again. So I did, got the same number, and put the inventory in his inbox. Few months go by and I get the same thing. There can't be that many. Do another one. So I'm very compliant and do it again, and again and again. This gets dragged on over a year and I'm starting to notice something. My boss is about to leave soon and he is deliberately pushing this off to the next guy to cover himself. So last week I was sleeping since I work nights and I'm woken up. My boss tells me I have to do a specific survey with my co-workers that will get sent up to the head honcho. This survey allows the small guy have a voice directly to the top. I tell him that I have the night watch, but he doesn't care and demands I go and do this survey. Fine. Before the survey starts, our boss tells us we need to be completely honest and all these surveys are anonymous. Rad. I wrote down what had been happening with the inventory and directed where they could find the documentation of the done inventories. Fast forward to yesterday. All my bosses are fired and now I'm reporting to new people who are now fixing the issues with the inventory. Next one is titled, "Threatened to evict me? I'll leave on my own." So, I just moved apartments because my previous landlady, roommate, Lisa was absolutely crazy and broke a ton of laws. I could have escalated this situation and most likely gotten my landlady, 40 plus female, in trouble, but I'm pretty young, 21 female, so I decided to go the malicious compliance route. Where to begin? From the moment I moved into the apartment, things were going awry. The landlady hadn't moved her stuff out of my unit yet, so I had to help her do that before moving my stuff in. Of course, she didn't help me move my stuff in, just wanted help moving her stuff. Now I'm a pretty laid-back person, arguably to the point of me being a borderline doormat, so whatever, cool, I'll help you move your stuff. Then after helping her, she decided to then tell me after I've moved in and after the lease is signed that my cat might not be able to stay because of her daughter's alleged allergy that she apparently didn't know about when she agreed to allow my cat in the unit. The landlady had 3 very aggressive and loud chihuahuas as well as constantly babysitting her 9-month-old grandson who stomped and screamed the entirety of his visits. Once again, it's ya girl the doormat, and I just kind of ignored the annoyance I had towards the loud dogs and child because I'm renting, so like, what did I expect? I notified her that if the cat hair became a problem, then I would temporarily house him until I could find a pet-friendly new place, and the landlady agreed this was the best route. Upon later conversations with her daughter, the allergy was super low grade, and her daughter would routinely pet and loved my cat without issue when she came down to do laundry, so I don't know why her mother made a huge deal of it. So, now that I've painted a picture of my move in, let me just add that I had 3 deal breakers. 1. The unit had to be pet friendly. 2. The unit had to have a separate entrance, and 3. If shared laundry, the washer and dryer were to be separated from my unit. It's totally my fault for choosing this place as the entrance was shared, and my unit had no lock, and I couldn't install one. The washer and dryer were in my unit, which meant if the landlady or her daughter wanted to do laundry, they would have to walk through my entire apartment, and now with the daughter's new allergy, things were looking grim. But whatever, I chose this as a favor to my landlady because she couldn't find anyone else, big red flag retrospectively, and I worked with her, so I figured it would be okay since we could carpool. Spoiler alert, it wasn't okay. So, shortly after my turbulent move-in day, things were tense as my landlady lost her father the previous year, and this was her first holiday season without him. I suppose that during my holiday to my parents, my landlady entered my unit without permission. She wrote a laundry schedule, so I knew when she was supposed to be down there. This was not one of those times, and took a disliking to my cat's litter box. Now I have one adult, male tabby cat that maybe pees once a day, so I would clean the litter box 2 to 3 times a week, which had never been an issue before. Upon my return home, my landlady screamed at me in her car about my lack of hygiene for my animal and accused me of neglecting him, while also claiming her son said he smelled dirty litter in her unit when he was over for Christmas. She demanded that I clean the litter box every day, every other day, which I was basically doing already as it was cleaned every 2 to 3 days, or she would move, and thus, terminate her lease and furthermore result in mine being terminated because I was leasing from her. Okay, cool. I totally thought she was out of line, but I'm a broke college student, so moving again after only being there for a few months was not ideal. Whatever, I apologize for the issue and any smell they smelled and let her know that I would handle it. My boyfriend was in charge of that chore, so he abides by her demands just to keep the peace, as well as taking it further by adding deodorizers to the litter. Some more backstory is that both she and her daughter smokers and would smoke in the house and right by the entrance. All of my guests have verified that they do not smell any litter even if they are standing right next to the box. The only thing they could smell was smoke. This was after I would slyly prompt them by saying, "I think I smell cat litter, do you? I think I may be desensitized." A month later, she sends a text stating that the litter is still an issue and that if it happens again, she is going to evict us as we are endangering the health of her grandson. At this point, she had begun terrorizing me at work and at home due to this issue. She was my HR rep, so I was kind of sole when it came to working because she would be the one that would handle that kind of situation. She's terrible at her job mostly because she's crazy and can't understand that her personal feelings have no place in the professional sphere. At this point, I'm like, duck it. I give up. I have jumped through fiery hoops for this woman, and she still isn't happy. So, we respond to her eviction threat with our 60-day notice of termination of our lease. The landlady did not take it well at all, and the atmosphere became tenser because now she had to move as well, as she couldn't afford the place on her own and could not get any other roommate, hence me moving in. During this period before I moved to my new unit, she repeatedly entered my unit to do laundry despite it not being her day on the schedule she wrote, and after I gave explicit notification that she is to wait until I get home to enter my unit to do laundry. I never said no, just not while I'm not home, because my cat can get skittish if I'm not there and strangers enter his space. She ignored my request, citing that it didn't work for her, and would enter my unit. She would also enter my unit early in the morning after I had left for work and would enter my unit to do laundry when I was sleeping. Anyways, my leaving the lease early really ducked her up because she wasn't prepared to move. She was making baseless threats, and I called her bluff. She couldn't find a new roommate, she couldn't afford the place on her own, and she was struggling to find a place to live because she's crazy and had super weird stipulations like there cannot be a speck of green in her unit and stuff like that. She wanted her niece to move in, but that would require kicking us out a night before we could move into our new place, which she tried to do, but I informed her of the law and said it wasn't happening unless we got a refund for the nights we left early. Ultimately, my parents are amazing and were able to loan me some extra cash, so I could move into my new place sooner than the first of the month, so I did that. My landlady's niece had already found other accommodations, so she got ducked there because she was going to have to front rent entirely on her own now, since she didn't want to refund us for the nights we would have had to forfeit for her niece. Her terribly mannered dogs had done plenty of damage to the unit before we moved in that the owner of the property charged her $400, which she promptly tried to blame on us, even though it was her dogs who chewed the baseboards and her own negligence that resulted in her dogs peeing and saturating a wooden door in their urine. I switched companies due to her harassment, and as of late, my replacement is messing up the job so badly that the company can't even function day-to-day operations. My replacement was my landlady, HR rep's best friend, so it looks terrible on her. They had to hire an additional person to cover the work that I was doing. I, on the other hand, got a new job in the field in which I'm studying. A bonus was that these new jobs had better hours, double the pay, less work, and was full-time with benefits, none of which I was getting from my previous employer. My new unit is amazing, and my new landlords are so incredible. My unit is separated from the laundry and is pet-friendly, and it has a separate entrance. I'm allowed to burn incense and candles again, which is super nice. Next one is titled, Classmate is Mad I'm Forcing Her to Eat Ethnic Food? Go eat a loaf of bread. This happened about a year ago now when I was in high school. My calculus class was very chill. About 20 kids who were all friendly with each other, a laid-back but enthusiastic teacher, and a light enough workload that we could afford to goof off in class but still learn and do well. At some point in the year I got really into cooking. It's my stress reliever. My family couldn't possibly eat the amount of food I was made, so I started bringing it into school and hosting Friday parties in my CALC class, with my teacher's approval of course. Now, I'm Vietnamese and I live in a predominantly white town. This is only important because it meant that most kids from town only ate American or European foods, and weren't used to eating other ethnic foods. Last year around Lunar New Year, I wanted to bring in some Vietnamese foods to celebrate. It is a very important time of year for my family. I ended up making a bunch of bánh đa lon, a steamed layer cake and a traditional Vietnamese dessert. Some of my friends from class found out I was going to bring in a traditional dish and brought in their own traditional dishes from their own cultures, whether they celebrated Lunar New Year or not. We had different Indian, Korean, Filipino, and Spanish desserts. It was great and I was really excited that my friends wanted to celebrate with me. Apparently this was an issue for one girl in my class. I would say bánh đa lon is an acquired taste, so when not a lot of people ate it I wasn't offended. I knew not everybody would like it. There was a lot of other food anyways. During our lunch period, one of my friends, who wasn't in our class but knew I brought food in, overheard a girl from my class complaining about the food while on the lunch line. Apparently she was saying really negative things about how I forced everyone to eat weird Chinese foods. Later that day I texted her just saying I heard she didn't like the food and wanted to know why. I don't really care when people don't like the food, I make it for myself and bring it in when I have extra anyways, but her calling it weird Chinese foods when she knows I'm Vietnamese didn't sit right with me. Welp, she texted back that it was rude of me to bring in weird ethnic foods that nobody would have liked except for me, and said I should know better since most of the class was white. I told her that I bring in food to share because I feel like it and that I don't have an obligation to cater to her tastes. If she has an issue with it, she literally does not have to eat it, and other people can bring in food too, so if she wanted to she could bring in something more to her tastes. After that she just told me that I shouldn't bring in ethnic and foreign foods and stick with American foods, because we're in America. Excuse me? Like, how much you wanna bet if I brought in jambalaya, which originated in Louisiana, she would call it a weird foreign food? Fine. She only wants to eat American foods? Then she can eat American foods. The next week I brought in a bunch of oliebollen, a Dutch donut, and started passing them out at the beginning of class. When I got to her desk I pulled out a loaf of Wonder Bread and plopped it on her desk, saying, "Sorry, but these are Dutch, too ethnic. Here you go, all American cuisine." Later she texted me asking what the hell my problem was, so I told her that almost every single food I brought in this year was ethnic and that it upset me she only had an issue when it wasn't European. She's entitled to not liking Asian foods, but if you're going to complain about it being ethnic, then you better have that same attitude when the ethnic food is white. And especially don't call another person's culture weird. She didn't complain about the food again. Also, before anyone comments, white bread isn't the only American cuisine out there. Here's a short list of what I've enjoyed making: tater tots, jambalaya, fried chicken, many types of pies, s'mores, and Philly cheesesteaks. America is a very diverse place, and that's reflected in its food. Happy eating. Next one is titled, Don't Want Me Splitting Up My Breaks to Help Coworkers? It won't happen again. Back when I was in my mid-30s I needed some extra cash for a lawyer bill, so I picked up an extra job at a national chain hobby store that I won't name, but it has a rhyming two-word name that lets you know it's a hobby shop. I chose here because they close on Sundays and they happened to pay a couple of bucks above minimum wage at the time. It was perfect. I would work a few evenings during the week, then a full shift on Saturday, doing just basic stocking and cleaning stuff. I didn't really care what I was doing there, and I ended up becoming everyone's preferred helper since I never said no unless I was in the middle of something else that had a higher priority. I would even interrupt my breaks to help someone out if they needed it. When that happened, I'd note the time and be sure to make up my missed break time when I was finished helping the person out. I even did this for the manager, let's call him John, from time to time with no complaints. It didn't bother me at all. I had my professional career and the temp work wasn't too difficult or degrading. I ended up working there longer than I needed to pay the lawyer bill, and I just stuck the extra cash towards paying off some other debt we had at the time. Everything was fine until one time John saw me in the break room again taking what he assumed was another break. Naturally he asked about it and I explained that coworker X needed my help with something, so I helped her and now was taking the rest of my 15-minute break. John didn't like that and told me that I could not split my breaks anymore. I had to take the 15 minutes all at once. Okay, if you say so. I didn't care, but it really impacted my coworkers, although they understood why I would not interrupt my break anymore. The real kicker came one Tuesday night when I was the only stocker working. The only other employees were 2 teenage girls as cashiers, and John. I had just sat down for my break a minute earlier when John poked his head into the break room to tell me I needed to go pull a chest off of a high shelf for a customer. They had already paid for it and were waiting for someone to load it into their car. I turned my head so I could look at the break room clock and told him I'd get right on it in another 13 minutes. He said they needed me now, and I reminded him that I was not allowed to split my breaks and also noted that he was interrupting my break. To make my point even clearer, I stood up and walked around to the other side of the table so I could sit down with my back to John. After the 13 minutes passed, I went up front to find the customers so I could get their chest and stick it in their car. I didn't see John, but a cashier told me that they didn't wait and ended up getting a refund on the purchase. Not sure why John didn't get the chest down himself. It wasn't that difficult. Anyway, John wasn't too happy with me after that and I didn't stay much longer either. I had earned my cash and didn't need that job by then. Next one is titled, Won't Let Me Carry Over One Day? See you in 2.5 months. I worked for a US network news company and was on staff, so I had a nice benefit of time off days and vacation. Because of the nature of the work, we didn't get bank holidays off. Instead they gave us floating holidays to use whenever we wanted, with approval of course. We were only allowed to carry over a max of 5 unused vacation personal days to the next year, as long as they were used in the first 3 months of the new year. This is the rub. As you can imagine, vacation time use becomes highly in demand around the Christmas holidays. We have to put in for them in September to get the days off. The news is 24/7 and needs staff coverage. I typically didn't use much time throughout the year, so I would take the week or so between Christmas through after the new year. This particular year, I had 7 unused days and I was already off from December 24th through January 2nd. HR reminded me that I can only carry over 5 of those 7 days. I asked if I can use them on December 22nd and 23, no. Which I understood, it was too late to find a replacement for me. As I was already off the rest of the year, there wasn't another 2 days to take off before the new year began. So, I asked for a one-time exception to carry over the extra 2 days, and I would extend my little Christmas break 2 days into the next year to show that I would use them as soon as possible. No, the rules state. Okay, here comes the MC. I went back to look at the policies, and since the new year didn't have any restrictions on vacation usage, like the December time has, all I had to do was give at least 2 weeks notice. I added up my 5 carryover days, vacation and floating holidays, as well as all my OT time that I built up, and put in a request the next day. All of this time meant I would leave on December 23rd and not return to work until the last week of February. The next day, I handed in my request, and since this person now had to schedule my replacement for the next 2.5 months and they had to pay me, I was on staff. She was not happy. About an hour later I got a call from the HR supervisor. I got my 2 extra carryover days. Last one is titled, Bring Your Own Deserts. Here's a fun bit of malicious compliance from the mid-90s. Picture it, a class of 6th grade app science kids. We were all a bit quirky. The backstory, our app science class was known for being filled with quirky and odd kids. To top it off, we had just as odd and fun-loving teacher. She let us be ourselves and was just awesome. So when our class decided that 2 of the classroom tables had fallen in love and were dating, she went with it. Through the year we developed stories about this tragic love, the tables never being able to be together. Towards the end of the year, we all decide that there will be a wedding, and the teacher agrees that we can rearrange the classroom to put them together. One student is in charge of making rings to tape to the table, one student is in charge of making invitations, and we all look forward to an end-of-year party. Well, the person in charge of the wedding invites misspelled the word dessert, and instead the invitation says bring your own desert. Another kid points this out, but the girl says, well, you know what I meant. Cue malicious compliance. Remember, this is a weird and quirky set of kids. Bring your own desert? Okay. Almost every kid brought in a homemade diorama of a desert scene. We lined them all up along the side of the classroom. It was hilarious to our 13-year-old selves. The wedding went off perfectly, the tables happily united in desert-themed matrimony, and their beautiful twist-tie rings stayed on those tables for at least the next 2 years. I changed schools after that. Luckily, everyone still did bring desserts, so we still had lots of delicious cake and cookies to enjoy. Thanks for listening.